Yeah.
Call the meeting to order for October 7th workshop.
Use the mic. Are you planning to use a microphone?
No, you have to retrain me every time, you know, especially after lunch or a nap. We have 6 items we're going to be discussing here today. I think everybody got a copy of what you might need.
No.
No?
No,
Well,
I screwed up, sorry.
that's okay. We'll tell you ahead of time. I will read them off. But before I read them off, I'd like to introduce Frank Batchelor on my right, your left, our new board member, replacing a vacancy left by John Taylor. Welcome to our group here.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just read briefly what we're going to be discussing here today. The first item is will be an explanation of what's going on with the water treatment plant, followed by a long-range planning future capital improvement projects for discussion. A discussion of some changes possibly to the OVA election campaign procedures. OVA office lease renewal that expires on the 31st of this coming year. Cassie Turner will lead that off, followed by discussion of OVA new membership fee from $150 to $200, also by Manager Turner. And lastly, discussion of our central pool winter hours for residents and children. So, without further ado, let me turn the microphone over to Alan Scott.
We formed a committee to check into, to investigate what was happening with the wastewater treatment plant, which is down Stonebridge Road, adjacent to the RV parking area, and is part of the access to Annandale across the bridge that the city maintains. The city is abandoning it as a wastewater treatment plant because they're sending all the water to the geysers. It's too expensive to operate and to make so that it would work in contemporary standards. When they abandon it formally, their intent is to put it into court to see who gets it and who pays for dealing with the problems. The problems are the buildings, the pond, and various other things that will have to be removed. The original deed granted the property to the city as long as they use it as a wastewater treatment plant, and when they don't, it reverts back to other parties. And the city will hope that other parties will get it with the cost of dealing with the physical problems there. We've talked to all the people. Our goal, the committee's goal, was to investigate it so that with the intent of Oakmont wanting to retain the easement across the bridge so that Oakmont residents could get over to Annandale that way, and so that the land there, the use of the land there would not be compatible with the residential nature of Oakmont. We did not want some commercial or non-Oakmont type development in there. So everything is up in the air right now. The city will be moving sometime in the next several months to start litigation on it. We're not going to be a party of that litigation as far as we know, but we're certainly going to be watching it carefully, and we have made all the players, everybody who's possibly associated with it, aware of our interest in this property and what happens to it. Any questions? You?
The city is litigating it with who?
Yeah.
they're going to throw it into a court, and the court's going to decide who will own the property. That's what we've heard. I would imagine they'll have to serve and get various parties to be part of that litigation. Who they'll serve and remains to be seen. So,
Who is your point of contact with the city?
I can't remember the guy's name. Do you remember, John?
We spoke with a number of people there, but at this particular moment, I don't have the answer to your question. If you get me with the after the meeting and give me your name, I'll find out and get back with you, but I can't remember at this particular moment.
Yeah, we had a member of the committee that was on a friendly.
We'd like to ask.
Oh, there he is.
We met with David Gillen and Mike Prince. David is the Director of Utilities, Mike Prince is his assistant.
He's the guy that did most of the work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why was it put in executive meeting?
I can't hear you.
Why was this subject put into executive meeting?
Why was it an executive
Yeah,
meeting?
because there's no sign of litigation or anything. there.
Because we wanted to discuss it and discuss the litigation, discuss the parties involved, and that's something that board can discuss, litigation and parties involved in executive session.
How can you discuss litigation when it's not even close to that?
You mean pending litigation, stuff that's going to come up?
When it's going to come up?
We,
They haven't even
well,
started.
we didn't want to wait for it to come up to discuss it. We want to be ahead of it. We want to be prepared for it.
I think I can answer her question. Articles of Corporation Bylaws, Section 5.64 says that in executive sessions you can discuss litigation in which the association is or may become involved. So this was an executive session and permitted by that section 5.64 to discuss it. That's one of the few items we can discuss in the executive
Yeah, but
session.
you don't even know if you might come involved in it.
We may or may not, but
That's it.
we can discuss it if we may become involved.
That's it.
Correct.
Look, we're trying to report it. We're trying to report it now to the public, the Oakmont public, so that you have an idea that the board and members of the committee were very keen on preserving the access to Annandale through that easement, as well as the use of that property in the future, so that it's compatible with Oakmont.
I'd like to elaborate on one point. There are a lot of possibilities here. We do know that the litigation is coming up, and we want to be prepared for one particular reason. And I don't think anybody in this room would disagree. Our number one purpose is to be able to maintain access to Annandale State Park. And there's a bridge there now. We're doing everything we can with all the parties involved to be able to ensure that we have that from now and on into the future. And therefore, when it comes to litigation, we have to look out for our interests here in Oakmont, and that was a perfectly legitimate discussion. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my name is Terry Oswald. I'm a little bit confused by your definitions of litigation. I understood from Alan, he said very clearly, we will not be involved in any direct litigation. We are interested in influencing the outcome of litigations. The quote that you just gave us from the laws there, does it make specific whether we're directly or indirectly involved in litigations? So therefore you can call it an executive meeting?
No.
Because I don't get it.
Well, nobody gets it because nobody knows what's going to happen.
No,
and
I'm
nobody
talking
knows
about
what's
your
happening.
interpretation of
Wait,
Davis-Sterling law.
maybe Hugh can answer your question. He's right behind you.
Let me just explain briefly that the problem the city has is that the property reverts to the heirs and assigns of the Bergers personally. And who they are has not been specified, and many years have passed, of course. And so who that entity is uncertain, or person is uncertain and unknown. And so the city will file an action with the court, name the entities or parties they think may be the natural heirs and assigns, and then put public notice out to the world that anybody who cares to assert an interest must do so. And that may open it up to others. So the certainty is, it's not certain at all. And we may well be named, if for no other reason, that we have been asserting an interest in it. They may want us involved if for no other reason than to make certain we're bound by whatever they decide. And so it's really up in the air, and it's really legit to call it pending litigation. And I'm not involved from the board's angle on this at all.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
Wally, go ahead.
I disagree with your statement that our number one concern here is access to Annandale. I think your number one concern should be not receiving that property. And that's got to be your number one concern, because that is a mess that you don't want to get into. And if you're going to get into it by saying, oh, we need the bridge across there, et cetera, you're opening a can of worms that we were told 4 years ago by our legal people. Don't open that can of worms. And I think you need to be very careful there as to what you're doing. Because the city would love to dump that plant on us. Absolutely.
May I answer that, John? Yeah, we are all quite well aware of that. That is most obvious.
Well, but you still think that Annandale access is super...
It's very important. We want to be able to get to Annandale.
Yeah.
Do we want to pay millions of dollars to deal with that property? No, don't be silly.
But you would, I still don't understand. John said your first thing is make
The premise of working this whole thing out is we don't want to get stuck with a bill of several $1 million. That's a given.
Right.
I mean, of course we're not going to do that. I mean, this board won't, and I doubt if any board ever would want to do that. That's, that's not even considered. I mean, that's like saying...
No, I understand that, but the city is not looking at it that way. They're looking at who can they dump this on.
Well, they're not going to dump it on us unless they dump it on us with a, we would love to have them dump it on us after they mitigate the whole place and it looks, and it's clean. So, that's silly.
The Long-Range Planning Committee has looked at access to Annandale for the past year, and that seems to be one of the most pressing needs that we've identified in our discussions with people who live here, people who move here for a number of reasons. They like to live near Annandale. We lost the access by the RV park a couple of years ago, I guess it was. Now we're down to possibly the bridge at the treatment plant and possibly the access by the Catholic Church through Wild Oak. If we lose the bridge at Annandale, now we're down to one. We would just urge that this board continue to negotiate on behalf of Oakmont residents who think that access to Annandale is important. It shouldn't be limited just to one. We should expand it. But at the same time, you got to be practical, and if they want to dump a used treatment plant on us, I don't think so. I know I wouldn't go for that, but we would encourage you to pursue this and keep Oakmont's interest in the negotiating. Thank you.
Thank you. Get this dependence upon electronic devices here. There's no further discussion. Before we move on to the next subject. Oh, Hugh, please go ahead.
Just one more thing. I would like to request the board consider the opportunity to discuss this further, and at the risk of getting anybody wrapped here in executive session. There's a number of things that have come up that bear upon the position Oakmont may take now and in the next few months that may affect the outcome and what Oakmont does now. And so I think it would be beneficial to have a discussion of the strategy that's possible to undertake with respect to the pending litigation with the board, because I think there have also been discussions with Mr. Benson And there are many issues on the table that I think would be beneficial to get the board's input on. So I'm just going to request you consider that.
Thank you. If nothing else, we'll move on to item 2, long-range planning and future capital improvement projects. We have 2 people from the committee today, so turn it over to you folks.
I guess I can start. Tony Lafowitz, Chairman of Long Range Planning Committee. If I seem a little fuzzy, it's because yesterday I spent almost 24 hours either in an airplane or in an airport waiting for an airplane. I didn't get to bed until almost 5 a.m. This morning, so I just wanted to warn you ahead of time. The Long Range Planning Committee at their last meeting, September 23rd, sent a letter to the board in which said, we passed a motion that the Long Range Planning Committee recommends to the OVA Board of Directors that any capital improvement project over $100,000, excluding emergency, safety, or maintenance projects, be delayed until the completion of the Long Range Plan Committee's community research project. And for those of you who are not familiar with the research project, this is something that our committee has been working on to prepare a long-range plan for Oakmont. And recently we began a 4-part research project which has the board's endorsement. It's one of their goals for the year, and the board has actually voted to spend some money on preparation of a portion of that project. And the things we hope to do over the next 6-7 months. Be 4 parts to the research, community-wide listening projects, which we've already had, and they've been described in the Oakmont News. This is where we listen to people and don't talk at them, we just hear what's important. Focus groups, which will be starting in December and which has been funded by the committee, by the board. A future survey, which would be probably an email-based survey asking a number of questions about future priorities, including recreational priorities, and some one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders. The reason we sent that letter and passed the motion by a vote of 4-3 was that at our last meeting, we were meeting with the Pickleball Ad Hoc Committee. And that's the committee that made a recommendation to build 5 pickleball courts behind the CAC where the putting green and shuffleboard courts are right now. And while our committee has no argument with the need for pickleball, we feel that it does have a part in Oakmont's future. What we're running into is the fact that we're going out and asking people what they feel Oakmont needs, what part of, what recreational facilities do you like, what don't you like, what do you think our priorities should be in the future, and we're inevitably going to run into the situation where we're asking for input, and if the subject of pickleball comes up, apparently it's already received endorsement of the board. And it's moving forward to review by the city. We did not vote specifically to recommend that you hold off on pickleball per se, but we wonder if we could have a hiatus in any future consideration of major capital improvement projects that would have the effect of changing Oakmont in a way that you can't just undo it. And I'm thinking about things like building new structures or adding new recreational facilities, possibly, anything like even the bridge to Oakmont, to Annadel that we were talking about a few minutes ago is going to cost a lot of money. What we would like to do is tell people at our work sessions that everything is on the table. You can comment on everything, and we'll take it under consideration and we'll work it into our long-range plan. However, with respect to the pickleball, we're in a position of saying, is that off limits? Is it a done deal? Are you interested in entertaining questions or answers to the question, is that the right place? Is that a facility that you would like to see Oakmont encourage in the future? Is it too big? Is it too large? What do we do? When we ask people for their opinion on anything that will affect the future of Oakmont, how do we deal with major capital improvement projects of that sort? I don't expect an answer right now. I just hope you keep it in mind, because as we get into these work sessions and focus groups, we're going to be hearing comments on pickleball and other major capital improvements, and we just like to know what ground we stand on. Lisa?
As the leader of the research project, I'd just like to point out that when we made the presentation to the board about why this is necessary, the idea was that we wanted to give the board data with which to make data-driven decisions for the future of Oakmont, in recognizing that our capital investment resources are limited and will continue to be limited unless we find some new funding sources. We wanted to make sure that you have the information from the people, and I have to tell you, I discussed this with a variety of professional researchers, and nobody's heard of any community like ours doing this level of in-depth, comprehensive research. It's really, truly groundbreaking. And we will deliver to you, to the best of our ability, a very, very high-quality product that will enable the board to make the decisions, and let's be honest about it, the decisions that cost us money. And people have a lot of different opinions about what we should and shouldn't spend money on, and where they should be or if they should even exist. And we've already gone through these things a couple of times. One was with the office building, which I think we spent about $500,000 on, and then at the end we didn't even build it. Where would we have put that $500,000 if it wasn't in that project? I mean, we could have used that for something. Then again, we've got the grandparents group, which came to us and said the group would pay for a tot block, we just needed to tell them where to put it, and we said no. And now we have pickleball saying, well, we want $200,000 to $300,000 of Oakmont's assets to build a set of pickleball courts, and trust me, I'm not against pickleball. I don't think anybody on the Long Range Planning Committee is. But how can we make such a disparate set of decisions? Nobody knows what are the ground rules. If you want something or don't want something here at Oakmont, what are the rules? So hopefully this data will give the board the ability to make high-quality, priority-based decisions for the future of Oakmont, and all we're asking you to do is hold off. The research should be done by the spring. And secondarily, it speaks to the role of the Long Range Planning Committee as a whole. You're going to have a Long Range Planning Committee, and some of us are spending anywhere from 30 to 60 hours a week on this right now. If you're going to have us doing this kind of work, then make it mean something, and have our committee mean something. I don't think we would just want to be sitting in a room writing papers and hoping you pay attention. We want to give you quality that can really help you do your jobs and help us make Oakmont the best that it can be.
Okay. Any questions to Lisa or myself? Herm?
Yeah. I applaud you in your approach to determine what it is that the community would like and not like. I think one of the things that the board always is interested in is some manner, some way in which we can assess what it is that the community really wants. I thought I heard you say that your approach to determining what the community wants would be by using email. Is that the only thing?
No.
Just this week alone, I will be going to 6 or 7 meetings trying to persuade people to give us email addresses. In order to have a comprehensive survey like this, which will start February 1st, we have to do it by email. There is no way we can afford any other means of doing it. Plus, it gives us a lot more error-free set of data. Inputting written stuff is very error-prone. That said, we are very, very fortunate that our research steering committee has linked up with Sonoma State University chair of the nursing department. And she is now an advisory committee member of our committee. And as of January, we will have any number of Sonoma State senior nursing students, anywhere from the ages of about 21 to 50, who will be doing a variety of things to help us reach people who do not have the willingness or the ability to use a computer. One is they will be communicating with people who show an interest and possibly doing an on-the-phone interview with them to fill out the survey. They may take an iPad and go to people's homes if they so choose. And we've also got the cooperation of the Computer Learning Center, who will let us use their computers as long as we have people to assist with people one-on-one who want to go to the Computer Learning Center. All that said, in the budget that we are asking from you for 2015 to complete the survey, we do also have some money in that budget for some mail surveys and for some more intensive interviews with people who are not, who need more assistance.
Okay, thank you.
We're trying to do everything we can to make sure every Oakmont resident who wants to participate has the opportunity.
Good.
I must apologize. This is one of the first meetings I've been to in like the 14 years that I've lived here. So a lot of this information is new for me, and I really appreciate the research and the background that you're bringing to the meeting here. I think the suggestion I would really like to support and pass towards the committee here is they're suggesting a $100,000 limitation. Anything beyond that should be referred to the community here. I totally agree with that, and I don't even understand why an open forum isn't an invitation to this process, so people can meet together. Here are the suggested improvements that are beyond the $100,000, and we get a consensus with a larger group of people. Because I haven't heard that mentioned even in this whole process. We're a community of several thousand people, aren't we?
This is new. The
Yeah.
Long Range
I
Planning
got-
Committee just passed this motion and is recommending it to the board as of a week ago.
Yeah, and truly appreciate it.
By the way, do we have your email address yet? If not, we have a form we can fill out.
I love it.
That's perfect.
No, because it's important to us. This is our community.
No, I understand. That's a very good point.
She's on the spot.
Tony, I wasn't clear. Are you asking the board to hold off on the pickleball?
No, our
Yes.
vote was not specific with regard to the pickleball facility. It wasn't specific with regard to anything. In fact, John Taylor told me in a telephone conversation several months ago that this board reserves the right to move forward with its own projects while the Long Range Planning Committee is doing its outreach project and survey. And that includes things like improving the West Rec and apparently moving forward on the pickleball. We just need, we need to get our act together and agree on what it is we can talk about, what it is we can request input on as far as the pickleball facility is concerned, without going to these meetings and saying, well, it's a done deal. We'd like your opinion and your comments, and we'll take them into consideration, but we're going to move ahead on the plan that the ad hoc committee presented. Everyone on the Long Range Planning Committee, myself included, believe that pickleball has a future, has a place in Oakmont, and we recommended last year that you move ahead and build at least 2 pickleball courts over by the shuffleball courts right now. That was our recommendation. We did not take a vote on whether or not we endorsed or disapproved of the proposed Central Park facility as currently designed.
Bridget?
We have a question. I come to all the meetings, and especially when you make a priority list, and every year the same thing happens. The priority list is there, but nobody goes by it. So what happens? Why do you even bother doing that every year? Nothing ever happened that was on there.
Can you give me an example, please?
Example is a pickleball. It was near, not even close to the top at the time.
Last.
So, pardon me?
It was last.
It was last. So how come it went to the front? And the thing is, like she said, people should have, or somebody said, people should have an option here. You just, the board should not be able just to make the decision on their own. Because I hear so many people, they're saying also the same thing. So why can't you make a little change on that? You know, and go by priorities, just for once.
Can I speak to that a little bit?
Please do.
To have meetings, only a certain group of people, and it tends to often be many of the same people, would put options out there. A lot of people work, a lot of people from my generation are still working, they can't get to meetings. Our intent with this research project, we're inventing the wheel this year with this. And frankly, I think it's something other communities like ourselves may copy because it's going to be such an excellent process and good product. Our intent is to continuously refresh this research. And we can slice and dice the data in so many ways and then go revisit a certain issue based on who responded to our survey and who showed up in what we heard in focus groups. So the idea is to continuously refresh the data on a year by year or at most every 2 years kind of a basis so that the Oakmont board always has fresh data from as many people as want to be heard. And they don't have to show up at a meeting. They do it by electronic means.
Thank you. Any further comments on this before we go on to
Yes.
election campaign? Yes, sir.
George Reck, I live on Laurel Leaf Place, right here where the pickleball court is going in. If this research project is a valid thing to do, which I believe it is, then why would not this pickleball court, which is going to cost a lot of money, come under that same review right now? Why go ahead and spend the money and then decide, oh my, we shouldn't have spent that? I believe that the data that they would give would be worthwhile before you proceed with the pickleball court.
Thank you for your input. Anybody on the board? Okay.
I might as well make my first enemies. I'm always, as a new board member, I'm going to try to be frank and honest. I'll try to be rational and reasonable, but certainly I will express my opinions. I never intend to offend anybody or to have an agenda or anything of that nature, but I think I have to speak up at times. There's a history behind this pickleball controversy. First of all, I don't oppose what Tony and Lisa are suggesting about holding off on capital improvement projects until we get the survey. I think that's a laudable and a good idea. But in reference to the pickleball courts themselves, I think we have to look at the history. This didn't just come up today, okay? The pickleball problem was given to the Long Range Planning Committee back in September, I believe, of last year. I was on the Long Range Planning Committee at that time. We considered the whole issue of pickleball courts at that time in October. We did research with other communities to find out how popular pickleball courts were, who were installing them. I think like 67% of the retirement communities already had pickleball, if I recall correctly. Del Webb, when they create a new retirement community, puts in pickleball. It's an up-and-coming sport. We were confronted with at that time, a group of 45 people who wanted to play pickleball. I think their membership now is up to around 80 or 85. Okay? They had a temporary arrangement with the Saddle Club that they could use their courts for pickleball until we could arrange here in Oakmont to accommodate them. They wanted to basically take one of the tennis courts. Well, you can imagine what a controversy that involved. There's like 180 members in the tennis committee, and they were very much opposed to having one of their courts taken away from them because they were using them. We did an informal survey of those tennis courts to see if, in fact, they were using them. And like most projects in Oakmont, they were being used 5 days a week generally, both east and the west, in the morning hours between like 8 to 10:30 to 11 o'clock. So pickleball people don't want to play in the afternoon any more than tennis court people do, okay? They want to play in the morning too. So we were faced with a dilemma. The board at that time asked our long-range plan committee to make a recommendation based on our research of other communities, based on the initial proposal that they needed 2 courts, it would cost about $50,000. Our committee at that time recommended to the board that they go ahead and proceed with building these courts. We also, the tennis court people and pickleball court people made an arrangement, although neither one of them liked it, but they agreed for 18 months that they would share at least one tennis court. The pickleball people could strike that one court and take it. But after the 18 months, the tennis court people would get their court back. So that was an agreement that they worked out. Neither one of them really liked it, but they did it, okay? So we recommended it to the board. The board then took it under consideration and said, and had public meetings on this, saying that we have this before the community to build these pickleball courts. It was referred to an ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee brought in people who were not really pickleball people, but who could involve some input on that particular, on what type of complex it should be. Perhaps one court could be used for badminton, perhaps basketball, that sort of thing. So it was invented by an ad hoc committee, and this was all before the public too. Okay? Now we are in the design stage. The design at this point is for 6 courts, 5 pickleball courts and 1 general court, and I'm not sure, I think my recollection is like $200,000. So it's considerably above what the long-range planning committee had recommended, okay? Now, no decision has been made on whether it's going to happen, how many courts. It's just in the design review, we're getting bids right now to see exactly how much it would cost, okay? So, my feeling is that in reference to the pickleball situation, we have to look at the history. And I think it's an issue of being bad faith on the board's part to all of a sudden say, forget about it, stopping it right now, we'll find a court somewhere to play. The agreement you arranged between the tennis courts and the pickleball courts, that's off. I just don't think it's right. Now, as far as any other projects, I don't think the board really has any other capital improvement projects that are coming up, and certainly they're not going to be completed or even get near construction by the time the survey is done in February or March. I understand the committee's concern. They want to be consistent. That is, they did turn down the tot lot. They did an informal survey, and the majority of the people were against the tot lot. So that particular project was stopped in its tracks. At that time, they recommended, though, that that should be a part of the survey, which is fine. But I think the pickleball courts and what we've done and the history behind it, for me, indicates that we should continue the process, review it, make the best decisions we can, but to keep our good faith with the groups that have been involved for the past year.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Frank, for the history of the pickleball research survey, etc. I don't even know what pickleball is, so that's okay. What concerns me is that you came up with the information at one point of doing the research, $50,000 per court, 2 courts, $100,000, and we're suddenly talking about $200,000. What I think we're trying to do is say, let's prioritize how we're using our money. And so there should be some kind of budget limitation that says, fine, if we want to do pickleball courts, we do it for $100,000, and we don't do it. We don't go stretching it and doubling the amount. So that's what concerns me. Where are our limitations, and where's the feedback for limitations like that? So this is why I really appreciated this suggestion, and I really recommend it to the board that you take it seriously. $100,000. Cut line here. Anything beyond that has to go to a larger forum to have that decision made.
Go ahead, then well, let me comment first.
Sure.
Generally, in the workshops, we don't run into debates back and forth about things. We listen to what you have to say, we take it back and we balance it, and we come back to you maybe for more questions. That's what we typically do. We've gone a little bit off track today, and that's okay. On the subject of pickleball and this recreation park project, let me say this. Nothing's been decided. We've done all of our homework so far that we can do. We don't have the dollar figures yet. Nothing's been decided. What we're not going to do is stop midstream now because of our previous commitments and put it on hold. That's not going to happen. Go ahead.
I've lived here for 24 years, and I know, and I'm not adverse to pickleball. I think it's a good idea. As my leg get worse and worse, I'll possibly be playing it too. But in all my time here, I had never heard of pickleball before this present thing started. I know you had the ad hoc committees and you had the meetings and so forth. I never heard of that. Still, it doesn't make sense to me that you wouldn't take the long-range planning committee and let that get that input before you proceed to make contracts or whatever for the pickleball court. And you're talking $250,000, not $200,000.
Okay, I think we've beaten this to death. Let's move on to the election campaign procedures. Andy, would you like to lead off on that, please?
Or I'd be glad to take the lead on this. In the last year, we've had, every year we have an election for board of directors. And in looking at what's happened over the last few years, a couple things have come to us, to the board, as suggestions to do things differently during the campaign process. And some of the things that we've learned over the last few years in analyzing the process is that we've been very regular in how we handle the elections. But because technology and communications today are changing, where 5 years ago the Oakmont News was it, you got to see and read news every couple weeks. Today, news is available to people every single day. Issues are put there every single day. The website is updated with news articles regularly about what's happening in Oakmont. And then there's also the social media. So one of the things that's come to the forefront is the ability for candidates during this 3-month-long election process to have the ability to have a dialogue some way that's fair and reasonable with the community, so the community gets to know the candidates as these issues come up during the period. Candidates are generally, the nominating committee generally announces candidates' names the beginning of February. I think it's February 1st is the date that they have to be, the slate has to be put in front of the board. And then the elections are until April. So there's a long period of time where a lot goes on. And some of the things that have been, I can tell you what we do currently. Currently, a candidate writes a 300-word statement for the Oakmont News and submits a picture, and then it gets published twice. And then there's Candidates Night. And Candidates Night happens a week or two before the actual annual meeting, and the ballots are counted. And it's a good chance to get to know some candidates. It's question and answer time period, but it's a very brief period of time, and it's towards the latter part of the election process. So some of the proposals that have come forward that we'd like the board to consider are to set up something, and this comes from a lot of different people and coming out of the communications committee with capabilities that are coming from there as well, to set up some interviews with candidates, or all candidates I should say, set up an interview process early on in the campaign period, and do it repeatedly if issues are changing and they're volatile, and set it up in a, same questions possibly, have people that do this, that are very qualified to do this, such as our writers, our journalists, people in the communication committee, set up the questions with input from membership, and ask everybody the same questions, videotape it, post it, and do it on a regular basis if feasible. And that'll allow Candidates Night to get rid of possibly the 35 to 40 minutes of speeches of the candidates, and set that up for questions and answers as well. Because at that point, that's the end of the time period, and that'll allow everybody, the members of the community, to throw questions out at people and get the answers or get people's answers so they can make their decisions. Another idea was set up some kind of technical forum, whether some kind of social media forum. None of these things have been fleshed out. These are just things to discuss, to think about. Obviously, there's Davis Sterling that has to be considered as far as fair and equitable treatment. and other statutory regulations that have to be considered, as well as our own governing documents and what they say. Another proposal was also to have limited endorsements on our website. So candidates, so people could, you can have 5 to 10 people that would endorse you as a candidate and have their names listed on the website. And the thought behind this was that there's over 4,000 people in the community, and not everybody gets to know everybody. In this way, what happens most of the time during the campaign period, or a lot of times, is people will ask friends, neighbors, who do you know, who would you like to vote for? And this allows other people to see who endorses certain individuals. And those are just some thoughts to throw out there to try to get some more current information or communication between candidates for the board of directors and the community during that 3-month period.
Any board members want to comment? Before we go to any comments from the floor? Ron?
Yes.
Yeah, you would have to do, I like the interview idea, but you'd have to do that like the first week of February, because you don't know who the candidates are going to be before then. So it's something you'd have to do quick, but I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, Wally. It's also something I think candidates should know if we wanted to make changes for this year when the nominating committee gets formed in the next 30 days or so. It's something that they should know to tell candidates that they should expect as well. I think it'll help candidates as well as help the members. I know, I can just speak for myself in the last year, it's very difficult unless you personally go meet with people all the time. It's difficult as a candidate not being on the board or not having the facility other than the Oakmont News to try to keep current with people on discussing events that are happening, especially as things are happening very, very quickly here.
Right?
The board already has a policy, the policy dealing with elections, and the policy generally says that all candidates, board and non-board members, are entitled to equal access to facilities and to time. I think that general policy covers what we're discussing. I think it's the implementation that's the issue. Perhaps this would be an additional duty to the committee that selects the nominating people to devise a forum or a guideline to make sure that the access to the facilities and to the time is made sure that everybody gets equal.
Any further comments or questions?
John, what's the directive then? If this is being discussed in the workshop and you're getting some kind of consensus, then what's the directive to Andy as far as what the board would like her to do to move forward with this? Is she going to be given it to the communications committee for discussion and revision? How do you want to do this?
Yes, me or Andy?
In general, if we're going to change the election policy, then how do we want to revise it and write it, and who's going to be doing it?
I think that part of the people in the nominating committee have to be a very integral part of these discussions, as well as the individuals who send us the emails that propose these things. These didn't come from me personally, I was just reporting on it, but I think there are people that have some really great ideas on how to improve the election process. And it can be done quickly. It's not, I don't think it's a long-term, we don't have to build anything.
Andy, would you be willing to be a representative from the board to meet with the nominating committee? No, that's not your responsibility to tell them what to do, but just to pass along an exchange of ideas and represent the board so we don't have another huge committee trying to get stuff done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have you chosen the nominating committee yet?
It's a work in progress.
The only reason I bring that up is because the more duties you put onto that committee, the more difficult it might be to get members of that committee.
Yes, we're aware of that. Okay, next in order on the agenda is regards our office lease renewal. I'll turn it over to Manager Turner to discuss where we are with that.
It's probably not a good time to bring this up after we've been discussing all this the other costs. What I just wanted to let everybody know and wanted to get your feedback on is our lease is going to be up with Dr. Kraut in 2005. Kathy, is it in May?
It's May 15th. May.
Okay, May 15th. I'm counting the days. Anyway, I am not an advocate of renewing the lease in that space. I'm not happy with the way Dr. Kraut maintains the facilities. I know that he has the building up for sale. If we were to stay there, I am suggesting that we then increase our office space to include room 6, which in fact we're going to be moving Mary Patricia in the next 3 or 4 weeks because we need more space in the office. So there's a couple of options, and I wanted to know and get some direction from the board as to where I should go with this. The first option would be to release that space or expand the space to a bigger space so that when people walk in, they're not at a counter, that there's an actual waiting room there, that people can sit down and wait and take their turns to be, so there aren't 6 people lined up at the counter waiting to talk to someone. But I'd also like better signage from Dr. Kraut, and the building should be maintained better. The other thing is I talked to the people from the Berger Foundation and asked if they would be at all interested in the fact that if we didn't buy the beauty parlor, beauty salon building, would they be at all interested in leasing it to us? They said yes, but again, that's a conversation that we need to have, because in order for them to rent out that facility, they would have to do a lot of ADA upgrades, including fire sprinklers installation. So at the end of the day, it might not behoove them to even lease out that building to us. But we can explore that, and we can explore the costs of leasing and what they would be willing to do on their end, what OVA would be willing to do on their end to make that into an office space. The other thing is we've talked to the woman who owns the building who has the curves space. And that's actually a nice clean building and a nice clean space. We could put our offices in there. We'd have to maybe extend it a little bit, but that's also possible. We just spoke with her last evening about that. And last but not least, we could always go back into the Brad Benson building. And so there's a lot of possibilities. And but there's a lot of conversation involved, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of negotiating involved. So I'm wondering what the board's thoughts are regarding our office space.
Cassie, do you have a feel for what Dr. Kraut's attitude would be toward fixing up and responding favorably to any of the requests you have for if you were to extend the lease?
I'm not expecting great compliance from Dr. Kraut because he has that building up for sale. And so he will want to do the absolute minimum possible in order to keep a tenant in.
And one of the reasons I ask is that I received an email from him recently in which he's asking, do I have any suggestions as to what he might do with the building? So I don't know.
Yes, even he can't figure out what to do with his own building.
Alan?
I just want to say that I have great faith and confidence in Cassie's negotiations and approach. And I wish you luck and go forth and come up with some suggestions.
Cassie, from what it sounds like, every single property needs some kind of tenant improvement. Is that
Yes.
correct? So,
Absolutely.
okay. So on each, and if you look at each one of these, which one would you see the OVA office functioning in the best? Location-wise, space-wise, is there one that stands out or not?
No.
Great.
Unfortunately, no.
It's too easy, wasn't it?
It's going to boil down to what the landlord is going to be willing to do for us. And keep in mind, I don't expect great things from any of these people because they're all having such problems trying to rent any of their spaces. So what they're going to be willing to do for us is up to negotiation, but I'm not expecting great things. The other thing is, at the end of the day, how much are we willing to spend also? So what this means is that I would just take some months, literally months, to explore this. Meanwhile, Eric is emailing and does want to meet, and I want to delay that meeting and open up a conversation of some sort with him to see what he would be willing to do and how amenable he'd be willing for tenant improvement, but again, a 1 or 2 month process.
Who is Eric?
Dr. Kraut. That's his first name.
Lisa?
This whole discussion, I mean, the office building is the topic that just won't die. And that's, that's okay. I mean, I personally think.
It won't die, but it almost killed us.
Yeah, I know. And I firmly believe we need to have a much better presentation at Oakmont. I have to direct people to the office, they can't find it, they don't know where it is, they can't, blah. And it's not very, very presentable when you go in there. But I'm hearing something that's actually a bigger issue, which is that it sounds like the beauty parlor may be terminally empty because the owners are not going to upgrade it to a point that it could be leased. There are other properties in Oakmont that are empty. There are properties, many of them, these are the commercial properties that look really bad. And I think they're marginally leased, not the highest and best use. It suggests to me that perhaps what we ought to set up is an economic development committee for Oakmont as an adjunct to the board to work with all of the landlords and business owners and to figure out how all these properties can be improved and see if we can't attract the highest and best use and work with the landlords to do that. And this is a long-term project, but we're talking about properties that are marginal and may just go on lease for a very, very long time.
I think the commercial businesses would love that, Lisa. There's 2 really big negatives with having a business in Oakmont, and that is the use of, you can't put signage out on Highway 12, so how is anybody going to know you're there? That's a huge negative. And the other thing is, it's a term called trip charges. And that's how commercial businesses weight whether or not that they want to lease a space in an area is, in fact, how many cars go past a space. And since Oakmont is its own unique community, most of the businesses here really are completely dependent on the people in Oakmont supporting them. And until there's some kind of change in consciousness in the area of Santa Rosa, which has high competition in commercial space, I don't really see how you're going to get any great run on these commercial office spaces. Having said that, it's time to start thinking out of the box, and that could be done. But meanwhile, we're kind of lurching towards May 15th of next year, so that's why I'm breaking up the subject.
This is a suggestion that's separate from the office building issue, but I'm afraid that if we don't proactively start doing something as a community and raising awareness and working with the city of Santa Rosa and the businesses and maybe changing some things that we haven't thought of yet, might be out of the box, as you say, we're going to end up with a commercial area that's deader than dead and ugly and run down, which it almost is already.
I don't think it almost is.
Molly?
Try to be nice.
About 18 years ago, when the Bank of America moved out of the building across the street from Wells Fargo, there was a huge outcry here to have a commercial venture in there for drugstore items. And CVS and a couple other companies looked into it and said, no way. I mean, this community could not support anything like that. 10 years ago, when Clem Carnelli decided it was time to go ahead and develop the meadows, he was stymied by the city of Santa Rosa saying 2 of the parcels had to be commercial. He could find no commercial business that wanted to settle in Oakmont, none, 0. And he worked for 4 years doing that. The Hunter Group that now owns it has the same problem. Many years before that, there was talk of putting a shopping center in that place, and Oakmont turned that down and said, no, 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 we don't want the city of Santa Rosa coming in here traffic-wise, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have a problem, but, and also, John Taylor did a pretty thorough examination of the beauty parlor a year and a half ago as to the cost of what needed to be done, what would have to be remodeled, et cetera, et cetera. The beauty of that is it has parking. The other places, we would have to share parking as we do now. Fortunately, there's not much going on where our office is, so parking hasn't been a problem. But it seems to me that we have the building we're in, we have the buildings that Curbs is in, and we have our old office building. We've got 3 landlords there that have major problems keeping tenants. I would think that a long-term lease dangled in front of them would, to where they don't have to worry about this kind of thing for a considerable length of time, would be advantageous to it at the moment. It's the only way they're going to, any one of those properties is going to be viable, I think, to the owner.
I think it will,
Go ahead.
yeah. I think it would be important for the board to decide how much money they're willing to spend. I think it's going to be essential that some of the contribution to remodeling, and all of these spaces you're talking about are going to take remodeling, modifications of some type or another. And we can expect landlords to contribute X dollars, and we can look at what the long-range lease cost might be, but you also need to consider then, okay, how much do we realistically want to spend ourselves on remodeling a location that we think we could stay in for 10 or 15 or 20 years? I think this is something the board needs to discuss. I know you have a whole bunch of ad hoc committees going now. Maybe you need another one.
No work. What I haven't heard is how many square feet you have today and how many square feet you want to have in the future. That is, are there growth plans for the number of people that you're going to have employed, and is their number of square foot per employee going to increase? That would determine the size of the square footage that you're looking for. And I heard the discussion on the beauty shop, and you, as I understand it, made an offer, it was accepted, and then it didn't meet your needs because of the cost to bring it up to your standards. It had the square footage requirement, right? It just had, so why would you want to go back there and rent it if it didn't meet your needs before?
It would have met our needs. It absolutely would have met our needs. In fact, we have an office plan in place that we could start on. But what, at the end of the day, is if we paid $300,000 for the building, at the end of the day was going to cost us to build out and put in the sprinkler and put in all the ADA requirements and everything else the city wanted, it was going to cost an additional $500,000. So where the board drew the line is they weren't willing to spend $800,000 buying a 40-plus-year-old building and then putting the office space in there. But if we have a landlord who's willing to do some of the tenant improvement work or do the ADA requirements and upgrades, then we could get a cost on what it would cost us to build out that space.
So the next offer ought to be $800,000 or less. Right?
Well, we have to go through the long-range planning committee first.
I think the suggestion is to the landlord to do the improvements, and we essentially pay a higher lease rate to reflect the fact that the improvements have been made, but we don't own the building.
Well, he's in Palm Desert. He's not gonna, we're gonna have to find a person. Whether he pays for that person is something else.
John, what I'm hearing is that the time between now and May 15th is going to be a very short period of time to cover all the things that we need to get done in order to end up with the best sort of office space.
Can you put the microphone up, please?
Yes. What I'm saying is I think, and I go along with what Herman says, in that you maybe need another ad hoc committee in order to get this thing to the point where we know what we want to get and we're willing to spend so much money to get it. And we tap all the possible resources that are in the area. We're going to run into May 15th very, very soon.
Well, we sort of have an ad hoc committee already. We just don't have it officially named. We have people working on this. It's like we're not operating in a vacuum.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
What could be more important?
I'm not saying it's not important.
I have the feeling that the closer we get to May 15th, the less likely Eric Kraut will be willing to cooperate with us. Because he knows that he has a silver barrel.
I'd like to clarify a point here. This didn't start today. We've been working on this for months and discussing it for months. So, it's not like we're starting at ground at zero and we're trying to get the quarter mile in the next 10 seconds. We've already started this race. I'd like to go back and just talk about one thing for a moment and I'll come back to you. It was mentioned, one of the, we didn't talk about very much, was the Benson's buildings, which presently have a locked-in long-term leaser, being Umpqua Bank. One of the things that I find attractive about that property, though it would need some upgrading, is that it has a source of income with a positive cash flow attached to it. It has a parking lot and access to some of the areas that we're trying to develop behind the swimming pool, the pickleball park area. So there's another benefit to that. We'd have our own building, and we wouldn't have to be dealing with long-term leases. Now I'm just tossing this out. We haven't looked at it any further, but I kind of like the idea, as if the bank's locked in on long-term, is to take out a loan as we've done in the past, and you've got a source of income coming in that's locked in to service the loan, and make up the difference, and end up with everything we'd want. Now, is that where we'd end up going? I don't know, but those are the kind of things we're looking at.
Yeah, just a comment. I think if you were to delay on the pickleball issue until you survey all of the people in Altamont, you may find that it's the opinion of the majority of people who live here that they would rather spend the money on a nice office space for the administration versus on a pickleball court, which is less than 2% of the population of Oakland is likely to use it. And if you include the people who are unhappy about their tennis courts being used now for pickleball, it's still less than 7.5% of the population here. So I sincerely urge you to delay any action on pickleball until you've surveyed and found out if that's how people want to spend the Oakmont Association's money. And my name
Yes,
is Lynn.
we closed that conversation earlier, but we heard what you had to say. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir? This is the last one. We're going to move on to the next one because it's already 4:15.
Okay. What's your time frame? What time are we done?
I'll figure that out in a moment.
Oh, okay. It's very good. John, you mentioned something about an ad hoc committee that's looking into this office space. What is the name of this ad hoc committee and how many people are involved?
No, I didn't say we had an ad hoc committee. We have a de facto. What I'm saying is this. Please don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say that. What I said was that we've already, please let me finish. We've already started working on this project. We didn't essentially set up an ad hoc committee to do that. We have a number of people who have been working continuously on this problem for a few months, and I'm just going to leave it at that, move on to the next subject. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was very kind.
Okay. Meet you in the parking lot. Next item up was a discussion of new membership fees increase, and then I'll go back to Manager Turner, please.
When the Finance Committee was reviewing the budget, one of the items that was discussed is possibly raising the new membership fee. And currently, the new membership initiation fee is at $150 per person. So in other words, if a couple purchases a home in Oakmont, we would charge them $150 per person, or a total of $300 to move in. And this is for the cost of moving in and also the ongoing, never-ending maintenance upkeep of the facilities. So the Finance Committee was wondering if the board would be interested in raising that fee. What you have in your bylaws, in the last page on page 20, is new member initiation fee 12.1. A new member initiation fee of up to $200 shall be charged each new resident of Oakmont beginning January 1st of 1993. The amount of the fee within this limit shall be fixed by the Board of Directors of the Oakmont Village Association. So apparently somewhere along the line, they thought that might have been too much in 1993, so they charge people $150, not to exceed $300. And the Finance Committee, just, I'm putting you on notice, they want you to reconsider raising the new member initiation fee limit.
Comments?
Has anyone checked the law on it yet? In the Finance Committee?
No.
Okay. I'm not opposed to fees, but I think we've got a problem here legally. Basically, we're all governed by the Davis-Sterling Act, as most of you know here. The Davis-Sterling Act basically prohibits associations such as ours from imposing fees such as that. I'm going to go down to each because I think this might resolve the issue. What I'm saying here is I like it, the idea of $200 in fees. I mean, what's the difference between 150 and 250 bucks? Big deal. But I don't think legally we can do it, okay? Section 4530 says you can charge a document preparation fee to the purchaser of a home for providing transfer disclosure of purchase of the home. This has to be based on the association's actual costs for preparation of the documents. You have to itemize it, basically, in order to charge that fee. Civil Code Section 4575 says, no association may impose or collect any assessment, penalty, or fee in connection with a transfer of title, except for the fee I just mentioned about the preparation of documents. Okay, well, maybe we can charge the fee to the purchaser instead of the, or to the, maybe we can, instead of charging the purchaser, maybe we can charge the seller. I don't think that can be done either. Civil Code Section 4730 says no association may impose a fee in connection with the marketing of an owner's interest which exceeds the association's actual cost. Maybe instead of calling it a fee, we could call it an assessment. Well, they got it covered there too. Civil Code Section 5600 says an association shall not impose a fee that exceeds the amount necessary to defray the cost for which it is levied. So I don't think there's any authority for our association to charge a fee. The Davis-Sterling Act does have a provision that says that we have to pay our bills, we have to keep our reserves up, and we can yearly either increase dues by 20% if they're necessary to pay our bills, or we can charge, we can increase the assessments by 5% of whatever the total budget is for the year. As far as I know, that's the only way you can charge any additional fees to any members or any purchasers of a property in Oakmont. I could be wrong, but I think that needs to be checked out before we just automatically raise the limit.
I understand what you're saying, Frank. I just know in other associations that I've been involved with, if you're in high rises or whatever, Davis Sterling takes care of that. You can call them move-in, move-out fees, things like that. And those are totally acceptable. The new resident fee, these are not the fees, I think, maybe fee is the wrong word we're using, but I know you are allowed to charge move-in, move-out fees and turnover fees in condos and other homeowners associations throughout the state of California.
I would suggest that if it's a reasonable fee that is to cover our costs for somebody being processed into Oakmont, and if Cassie can justify the time that our staff is spent on doing that, then it's certainly legitimate. And I'm sure she could come up with a budget along those lines that it would cost $200 to process somebody through with all the literature and time and effort.
Is this,
can't you?
Is this a document preparation fee you're talking about?
No, and I'm certainly open to the idea of getting a legal opinion about this.
I'll take one here, and then I'm going to wrap up and go to the next one. Go ahead.
How did you get the first $150? Whatever you got for the $150, that's the section. And that, if you got 150, is there some rule that says you can never change it?
I'm going to ask Manager Turner to, with all due respect to Frank's assessment, I'm going to ask you to check with our counsel that has specific knowledge in this area.
All right, then I'll get the advice of Attorney Sandra Godley.
You're off.
It's not on. It sounds like it's on.
It is on.
It's on. To answer your question, I think where some of this went sideways is in the old days, I think people were less inclined, board members were less inclined, managers were less inclined to get legal opinions on things that they could do or not do. And this could have been one of those times where people thought, well, we need to bring in some new revenue, let's just pass this new member initiation fee. And so that's why it's in the bylaws. So I I'd certainly feel better if it was investigated and you got a legal opinion on it.
I think you ought to move along. All you have to do is call Malcolm Manuel. He undoubtedly knows that you can or can't.
Well, I've already made that request, so that's... Okay, next and last item, central pool winter hours for residents and children. There's a increased load on the other pools while the west is closed, and we need to talk a little bit about what's going on in that area, if it does impact us, and if so, what do we need to do about it or not do about it.
Bill, I can tell you that because the West Rec Center is closed now and it will be through the new year, that the swimming pool at the Central is being used extensively. I was over there at 7 o'clock trying to swim, and there were 6 people in front of me frantically swimming laps. So I do believe that at least for the instance of keeping this pool open to accommodate all the people from the West Rec, you need to do it. Whether or not you need to invite children or give people children's hours, that's up to you.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Why do you want to change that now? The West Pool is closed. The Central Pool was never open any winter, and I live here for 20 years. It is closed, always. So why do you want to change the children hours now? They never came in the winter time anyhow. So I don't understand what's going on.
The office needed clarification.
What clarification?
The clarification is the Central Pool going to stay open again, like it did last year? Is this a permanent thing? And then, if it's a permanent thing, are there going to be no children's hours, or do you want children's hours?
If we have a drought, how you can keep that pool open all winter long if you have 3 pools?
There's 2 pools, Bridget.
But the West is going to be open, I hope, in 3 months.
Don't count.
That's what they told us.
Any further discussion on this? No, we're sitting here asking what you'd like. And
So the question to you is, do you want to keep the Central Pool open until further notice? And do you want children's hours or not?
Yes, keep it open. Keep it open. Children's hours, if anything, in the afternoon. Don't extend hours to them. It's crowded now as it is. It's more crowded than it was before. The people from the West are coming earlier than they were, and it gets more crowded. Repeating it.
I think this is something that should be put on the action agenda, the next meeting. It's something we can't decide now, but it's obviously, we have to keep the Central Pool open because we lost one of our pools, and we need to discuss if there's so many people there to restrict some of the children's hours. But I think that needs to be an action item.
And let's put it this way. We don't make decisions here, and we don't make motions here. We get information here. I'm going to leave this particular, we're going to close the meeting off here in a moment. We're going to leave this subject open, and at the next regular board meeting, we're going to have an action item, and we're going to take action on this particular point. So you have between now and then to tell us if you think of something. Otherwise, we're just going to decide based on what we know. So that's pretty much the bottom line. Fair enough? Okay.
Could I ask what the feeling of the board is now? Are you planning to keep it open? Are we thinking over?
No, do we want to keep the pool? The thinking now is, do we want to keep the pool open? Looks like the general opinion is yes.
Thank you.
But it will be decided at the next meeting. Okay, well, thank you all for coming today. By the way, I didn't mention earlier, it had been requested in the past that this meeting be videotaped for other people to sit in on it, and we've done it. I should have mentioned that in the beginning instead of at the end. Bridget?
Yes, I have one more question for you. That is about the executive session you had today. Why do you put the electric accounts contract on the agenda?
I'm sorry?
The electric account.
It was taken off the agenda, it was not discussed.
Why do you do that? You go in.
Because we have a right to make corrections if we look like we're headed in the wrong direction.
Did you take it off?
Yes, I just said we did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you sign the contract with Northview?
No.
Huh?
Not yet.
Okay, I thought I wanted
Well, yes.
We haven't signed it yet, but we're going to. Yes. How's that? Yes, it will be signed, but if you ask me, has it been signed? Did I sign it yet? No, I didn't. That's the truth. I didn't sign it yet. Will it be signed shortly, likely with the next day? Yes.
When are we going to know what the contract cost is going to be?
We can answer that question now. Let me go back to my notes, so I don't put my foot in it. The basic cost at this point, the basic cost, this does not include any kinds of things we might find we don't know about now when we open up the walls, is $628,137.
Thank you.
For the west?
West. And they're going to start work as of next Monday.
And by the time we get through tearing the walls apart, it'll be $700,000.
Meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.